Okay, hello everybody. Of course, thank you for having me here. This is a pleasure for me. It's a great event. So today I'm going to be talking about Azure Active Directory B2C. But of course, let's just give some thanks to our sponsors. We know that without actually the community and without them, this event is not possible. So thank you very much. And let me introduce a little bit myself. My name is Facundo La Roca. I am in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And just to give you a brief overview of what I've been doing in the last couple of years, let's say 3 years, by accident, I've been working a lot with authentication, doing some identity server stuff and integrations with Okta, Ping1, a lot of about OpenID Connect, SAML too. And I like it. I learned a lot about that experience, building logins, that kind of stuff. And that's why I prepared this session. So let's talk about authentication, right? Nowadays, almost every application requires a login. This is a well-known feature. Every developer, sooner or later, will have to deal with a login feature, some kind of flow, that kind of stuff. The users are also pretty used to it. So it's like a feature that we all know how it works, what it should be, and that kind of stuff. But something interesting that I've learned is this doesn't add a real value or a direct value to our business. So what I mean is we must do it because we know, because this is a security concern, but probably when you start building your software, the first piece of code that you think about is your business. It's not your login. So this is kind of infrastructure there. It must be there, but we don't really care about it until we need it. And finally, most of the time, but not always, we can move forward without having the authentication in place. I mean, so you can have some demo, but as long as you want to go to production, you need to have all that feature there. So, and this is so true, for instance, if you are trying to deploy your application to the Apple Store, for instance, they won't approve your application without the corresponding login. Okay, so this is somehow a blocker. Okay, but let me ask you this. How long does it take to build a login? Okay, and let's take a look. So when we see this at first sight, this sounds simple. Probably I would say 2 days of work, 1 day for the backend, 1 day for the front end. Depending on your seniority, it's going to be something like that, right? Sounds simple. However, in order to have a user logging in, the user must register first. And now we are adding probably 2 more days of work, correct? And you want to have some kind of email verification step there or flow. So now we do have probably 2 more days. You probably want to integrate with social providers or social networks like Facebook, Google, Twitter, GitHub, okay? And this feature is complicated. Usually it takes something longer, probably 4 to 5 days. You may need to implement for sure password recovery. This is a must. And sometimes you may want to implement multi-language support. So this is a lot behind a login. It's not just a login. And as you can see, those are not just a screen that works isolatedly. So they create some kind of user flow. They must work all together. So complexity increases a lot. And something important, when you are building your authentication experience, you need to take care of your database. You need to take care of your hosting environments, your certificates. So there are some DevOps work there that needs to take place. Okay, and yes, most important, security. Your authentication feature must be secure. If you are storing user database, which is considered confidential, user attributes or user information is usually considered confidential, you must implement encryption or REST. You may need to implement multi-factor authentication too. So as you can see, doing a login is just much more than just doing a login. There's a lot of things, and I feel like this is kind of the basic stuff to go to production, right? But we are not even talking about robustness, availability, redundancy, scalability, and so on. So at the end of the day, it's a lot of work that we need to do. So my experience building all these features takes from 4 to 6 weeks of work. Moreover, you need to have a lot of skills to do that. It's almost like a whole team to build something that we always have to build, right? That led me to this question. So do we really want to spend all that time doing that? Or at least, do we want to spend that time always? And of course, that if you are a big company or you're working in a big team, experienced team, this may not be an issue for you. That's okay. That's something that you can afford. But what if you are a startup, okay, and you want to go fast? What if you are building an MVP, okay, and you want to get some investors and you want to create something real quick? What if you have a short deadline? Because we know that time to market these days is determinant, okay? And most important, what if you don't have all those skills? Because as you can see, it's not only a front-end or a back-end developer, there is a lot of the stuff, and also security involved, which is always complicated. Okay, so all these things together led me to think that this was weird. So isn't there a better way to get all that stuff done without actually having to do all that? And what if I don't have the skills, right? And luckily, the answer is yes. That's why I created this talk. We are going to talk about Azure Active Directory B2C, and we will see how we can implement all these features. And this is the main takeaway I want you to remember. We will do all of this stuff without coding any line of code. And this is mind-blowing, in my opinion. We will do it in this session. That means that we will do all of that in less than 45 minutes, which is amazing. Okay, so Azure Active Directory B2C is a service that is built on top of Azure Active Directory. So why is this important? Because this service, which is an identity and access management system as a service, has been there in the cloud for years so far. And we know it's proven to be secure, reliable, available, scalable, and so on. This is very important when we are talking about authentication. So it also provides the user database, so you don't have to take care of that. You do have encryption at rest. It already supports protocols such as Auth, OpenID Connect, SAML, which is important because you, at the end of the day, you always want to run over a protocol. It already uses multi-factor authentication in case you need it. And if you need to consume the user database, okay, there is already what Microsoft built, which is the Graph API that you can use. And it's pretty simple, it's very well structured, and it's amazing, right? This is important. Then we have the service itself, which is business to client. But let me just briefly explain what this is. You may have heard about business to business. In simple words, this is a service that is not designed to be exposed to your client application straight away. So, simple words, you need a backend. However, when it comes to B2C, this service has been designed to be exposed to the client application. So, and this is the second takeaway. You don't need a backend in the middle. You don't need to code. And that implies no hosting, no worries, okay? So this feature will give us all those user views and design that you saw before, user attribute customization, multi-language, user registration, branding, and all that cool stuff that we want, that we don't want to build, of course. Okay, so we're almost ready to go to the demo. So, but I like understanding how my service fits into my architecture. So I created this simple graph there, just to give you an overview. This is very simple, really. The service is simple. So on the left side, we have our website. And on the right, we have B2C domain, which is Azure. And just the flow will be as simple as having an action in your site that will redirect to the Azure domain via a URL that we're going to build. At this point, B2C will take control of everything, so it's kind of black box. We don't care what's going on there. The only important thing that we need to remember is that at the end of the flow, B2C will create what's called a shared WT token that will be delivered to our application so that the application can ensure that the token is authentic and it can extract some user information such as first name, last name, etc. Okay, it's as simple as that. Remember this callback URL because we will use it in a minute. So we're ready. So let's go to the demo. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is just to create the tenant, right? So, and this is from the Azure portal. I'm going to go to create resource. I'm going to look for Azure Active Directory and I'm going to hit B2C, of course. Let's hit create. Let's create a new tenant. This is the most common scenario. And this form, it will look familiar to you. Okay, so we will have to give it a name. We will have to select the location, subscription, resource group. This is pretty familiar within Azure. There is one important concept that you need to remember here. The initial domain is a subdomain within Microsoft domain. That means that it must be unique. This is the only consideration that you need to take into account. Okay, so if you try to create something, there will be a validation step, checking that the domain is available, is everything is fine. There we go. This is already in use. Once you create a tenant, okay, so I already have it once, so I don't want to spend time waiting. This is usually take from 5 to 15 minutes. So you will end up here, right? This is a home screen from the service. So we are ready to start creating our authentication experience, right? So let's start talking what the main steps are, because Azure AD B2C is already telling us. So step number 1, register an application. Step number 2, add identity providers. Step number 3, create user flow. Okay, so let's start by creating our application. So we are going to go to the app registration sections and let's hit create new. So why do we need an application? This is important. So since we are exposing our service to the cloud, we don't want any application out there which is not authorized to consume our service. So what we need to do is actually register that application. I'm just going to give it a name so far. I'm going to hit register. Okay, so, and remember that I talked about the callback URL. Okay, this is one of the most important things. We don't want Azure to deliver tokens to applications or to callback URLs that haven't been registered. So once I created the application, what I need to do is I need to add a platform. As you can see, it already offers different options depending on the platform you are using. It can be a single page application, native applications. I'm going to go with the web. Okay, and this is where I have to put my callback URL. Let's say that if you are working with MVC, you probably are familiar with this local host, and it will look like this. Sign in OIDC. So this is how this URL usually looks like. Okay, so for testing purposes, I'm going to use a site that will allow me to show you the token, because I don't want to get another application involved. I want to keep focus on Azure AD B2C. So I'm going to register this callback URL so I can show you how the token look like. I'm going to hit configure, and there we go. Just for testing purposes, I want to get the token, so I'm going to include them. I want to show you, but it depends on your flow. This is our more related to what you expect from the service. And there we are done. So we just register the application. Okay, so this was step number 1. Now we need to add some identity providers. So I'm gonna go to the identity provider sections. And as you can see, there are already a lot of different, or the most common services ready to use. So I already have my local account, which is username and password. And I want to, just for testing purposes, I want to show you how integrated with GitHub will look like. And as you can see, this is so simple. The only thing that we need to do here is grab our client ID and client secret from our GitHub account, put it here. It offers us the callback URL that we need to configure on the other side. We save it and we're okay. That's all what we need to do. Okay, so as simple as that. Local account is by default already configured, so I don't have to do anything specific. Awesome. So we did add our identity provider. Now, this is one of the most important things, is create the user flow, because at the end of the day, this is what the user will see. Okay, so let's go to user flows. Let's create new, and this is amazing. We already have a lot of options to use. This is the more common scenarios, like sign up, sign in, and the combination when we want to allow the user to register or sign in. So I'm gonna use that one. I'm gonna hit create. So I need to give the name. I'm gonna use sign in, sign up. Okay, you can have more than one. I need to select what providers I want this flow to use. Okay, I'm gonna use my email account and GitHub. There are some multi-factor features that I can enable. I'm not gonna use it now because I don't think it will add value. And then something interesting, I have a list, a bunch of attributes, but predefined built-in attributes that I can tell my user flow to collect. For instance, I can say, okay, let's collect given name and surname. And then on the right column, these are the list of user attributes that I want to include in the token. Okay, so I may not need or may not want to include all of them because of security reasons. So that's how this is used for. So just for testing purposes, I'm going to click given name, but I don't want to include surname in the token. Okay, let's hit create and let's create it. Give it some minutes. Okay, there we go. Now, let me show you how this looks like. Let's run it. So as you can see, it's pretty simple. So I am ready to run the user flow. So let's see how it looks like. Amazing. Look, so we do have our email and password, our flow. We do have our GitHub integration. And we do have this background. This was previously configured because I wanted to give you some cool user experience. And let's see how the sign up form looks like. Oh, amazing. So pay attention to this. We do have email verification already. Let me show you something. If the password is not strong enough, I'm going to get some validation error, so which is cool. I'm going to send the verification email in the meantime. So I'm going to put, no, this is not what I want. Let's set that password. Let me grab from my email the verification code. There we go. I'm gonna verify the code. This is amazing because I don't have to take care of that. I know that the account is valid now. You see, I have username, first name, sorry, and last name already. These are the attributes that I included previously. So let's hit create. But this is amazing because just by doing clicks, I already have my user login and sign up experience. And then I've got my token. And as if you remember, I just click it on name only, but I didn't want to include surname. That's why it's not here. So amazing. So we have just built the first step, is our login experience, including sign up. Okay, but now let's start adding cool features. So far so good, but I would like to include more properties to the registration form, some custom ones, right? So let's say that I want to include English level. And I don't want the English level to be a free text. I want it to be kind of a combo box or drop-down experience with some values, predefined values like basic, medium, and advanced. Something simple like that. So let's add these custom attributes. So I'm gonna go to user attributes. This is the list of attributes that can be used in any user flow. Okay. So we will have a built-in list that we can select. So let's give it a moment. It's a little bit slow today. There we go. And as you can see, there are already a list of built-in attributes, but I can add my custom attribute if I want. So let's add English. Okay, for the demo. There is a data type associated with it. I'm gonna go with string, that's okay. I'm gonna hit create. And remember, this is somehow like defining the table structure, but I'm not actually telling the UI to use this new attribute. So I need to do that. I'm gonna go to the user flow and I need to tell the user flow, okay, let's collect this new attribute too. So I'm gonna go to the user attribute section, and as you can see, there is the English level. I'm gonna save. If I want to include that extra attribute in the token, like I did before, I must go to the claim section out here. Okay. So far, so good. So let's give it another try. Let's try to run the user flow. There we go. Let's go to the sign up and see how it looks like. Amazing. There we go. I do have my English level, but still this doesn't look like I want. I want a drop down with a set of options. Okay, so let's modify that. As you can see, every single flow is composed with a set of layout page, the login screen, then we do have the registration form. So there is a section called page layouts here, where I've got the list of layouts that a user flow can have, like the unified sign up or sign in, and then the local account. This is the one I was using. If you pay attention, I have a list of attributes that are optional on that flow, like email, given name, surname, and English. I can even make them mandatory if I want, okay? Each user attribute has some user input type associated with it. So let's go to English level and let's change it from drop down. Okay, amazing. Now, think of it kind of key value pair, right? So I need to add some dictionary here. Let's go with basic and the value is going to be a B. Let's go with medium with a value which is going to be an M, and let's go with advanced with a value which is going to be an A. Let's hit OK. Don't forget to save the user flow. And once we are done, there we go. Let's give it a try and let's see. I'm gonna run the user flow again. Amazing. Let's go to the sign up flow. Oh, amazing. There we go. So now we do have our drop-down list and the user can select one of them. It's not a free text anymore. Awesome. Now, even though this login looks like I like it, we are doing a very good progress. Okay, and so quick, we are going so fast, but it still doesn't feel like my website, right? Because yes, I added the background, but there is no logo here. So I want to have my logo there. Let's say I want to add some basic branding. So let's do that. So again, I'm gonna go my overview again. I'm gonna go to company branding. There is already a default. We always must have a default. And as you can see, I can select my background. Let me go to, there we go. I have my background. Just keep in mind that there are some restrictions in terms of file size and image size. And then I'm gonna go with the banner logo. So don't forget to save the changes. There we go. This is the basic branding that we always have. There are more advanced scenarios if you want a very custom implementation, you can still do that. But most of the cases, this is fair enough. So let's run it again and see how it looks like now. Oh, there we go. Amazing. Now we do have the logo, we do have our background, and the user experience is much more intuitive, right? Let me show you something. So we didn't actually see how the GitHub implementation. So let's give it a try. I'm gonna hit login with GitHub. So I am already logged in GitHub, so probably you don't see the GitHub login, but this is what I wanted to tell you. The user flow is smart enough to detect that some information that is mandatory is not coming from the provider, because the provider may not expose that information. I, as a user, may decide to not to expose that information, so we need to collect it. And as you can see, the flow is already doing that. This is something that when you are implementing your own, you must take care of, okay? There is a logic that you need to implement to detect what's coming from the provider and what's not, so that you present the form to the user. And this is amazing because I didn't have to do anything about it. Okay, awesome. So we do have our GitHub integration. So let's do a brief recap. So we started creating the very basic, okay? We registered an application, as you remember. We added some identity providers and we created a user flow. Then we created a custom attribute called English level, which was a drop-down list. We added some branding, and then we saw how the GitHub integration works, which is amazing. We are doing a great progress now. Now, this is one of the most important features that I wanted to mention. Many times you do want to implement multi-language support, like in this case, because I am targeting an Italy audience and I want my user experience implement that language too. And why is for me this is important? Because the ones that have had that experience previously, when you are building your website, if multi-language support is not designed from the very beginning, then it implies a lot of refactoring. You most likely will have to go component by component, just modifying a lot of things. You probably need to inject new services, and that's prone to error, right? And if you break or mess things up regarding your authentication experience, then that means that your users won't be able to log into your platform. So it's risky, it's complicated, it's a lot of work. Now, let's see how difficult or easy is implementing multi-language support in Azure Active Directory B2C. Okay, remember, whatever that is related to how the user interacts with the site is going to be in the user flow. So if I'm talking about languages, which is how the idiom or the words or the labels are presented to the user, this is going to be in the user flow. Okay, so I'm gonna go to my user flow, and there is a section here called languages. So let me just highlight this at the end. Okay, so I'm gonna go there. There we go. I need to enable language customizations. By default, it is going to use English. I'm gonna show you in a minute why that's important. There we go. And as you can see, Azure already offers 36 different languages that we can use. Now, let's think for a minute in those cases where you need to implement your own. So it's not necessarily because you are targeting an audience in a language that's not supported here, but sometimes you may want to create a very custom experience or with a specific audience targeting specific lingo. So in that case, you can still create your own language, which is amazing, super flexible. This is a very super flexible feature, as it must be. So English is enabled by default. I'm gonna go and enable Italy, right? So just to get started, the only thing I need to do is just enable it. And just to make you aware, there is this default feature. There must always be a default language. And this is because if the client application consuming the service doesn't specify a language or an idiom, then Azure AD will try to read that information from the browser. Okay, if the browser doesn't provide that information, then we are going to use the default option. And that's important. It's important to remember how the decision tree is made about language support. So I'm gonna enable Italy. Don't forget to save the changes. I'm going to start by this, and then we will go deeper. And let's see how it looks like. Okay, there we go. Awesome. Amazing. So we have it. Now, let's give it a try and see how it goes. As you can see, you may not remember this, but now there is this localization feature here that I can specify, okay, which language I want to request. And as you can see, and so by the way, I'm going to show you something, because so far I've been using this feature, which is the run user flow, right? But at the end of the day, this is just a helper that is building the URL that I mentioned in the previous step. So let's see how the URL looks like, because at the end of the day, this is all what we need, right? So let's build the Italy version. There we go. And let's compare it. Again, the one in English. Okay, there we go. As you can see, the only difference is that we have now an extra parameter at the end containing the language that we want to use. And that's all. It's as simple as that. When the client application wants to request a specific language, this is the only change that the application will have to implement, right? So back to the user flow helper, let's run it and see how it looks like. Okay, so this is amazing. This is one of those features that blew my mind away the first time I came to it. As you can see, everything is there, and I didn't have to do anything specific here. It's just one click, which is amazing in my opinion, right? It's a time saver. So let's see how the sign up form looks like. So far, so good. This is amazing. Everything translated, but this custom attribute that we added before is not translated. And that kind of makes sense, because since this is custom, this is something that we added, Azure doesn't know how to do that. So we must provide a specific translation for this attribute. If I had more attributes, I would have to provide translation for all of them too. Okay, so let's see how difficult it is to implement this custom attribute translation. Okay, now back to the language section. I want to provide a translation for Italy, right? So I'm going to hit Italy. And as you can see, again, as we saw with the page layouts, I do have every single layout that the user flow can use. I have it here. So as you can see, there are resources for every single page. In this case, since I want to translate only the local account sign up page, I'm going to look for that one. This sounds familiar because we saw the same when we were scanning through the page layouts of the user flow. Okay, so I have the option to download the defaults, right? So I don't have to create everything from the scratch. So the service is really designed about this concept of making things intuitive and easy. So you don't have to do a lot of stuff by yourself, which is amazing. Okay, so I have the file here. Let's open it. There we go. Amazing. This is how the file looks like, right? So as you can see, it's just a plain JSON containing every single translation that you saw in that screen. Okay, That means that if I want to translate something else, or I want to change something because there is some lingo specific that I want to use for the kind of audience that I'm targeting, I can do it here. It's not that this is limited to what I had added by myself. I can do it for every single translation that I see in the screen, right? So what I'm going to focus now is on English. I have English here. And as you can see, it's very intuitive too, because every single element has an element ID, right? So I'm gonna look, and there are actually three elements, and let me tell you why. If we run the user flow again, we are trying to remember that we are trying to translate this English level that we added. So let's see. So we have actually, this is the label, right? This, what you see here within the combo box, this is the helper text, and then we have the collection that we want to translate. And if you pay attention, this is why we have actually three elements for that specific attribute. So we do have the label, which is the display name. We do have the helper, actually is using the default, which is the same of the label. And then we have the collection. Okay, so let's modify this and let's see how it goes. Okay. Okay, I do have here a helper, so I used Google Translate for this. So hopefully this is correct. If not, I just apologize, right? So let's modify our JSON file. I'm going to start with the display name. I'm going to use the same for the helper, right? Now, let's modify the collection. Remember that this was some kind of key value pair, so I don't want to do anything with the value probably. I'm going to keep it the same, but I do want to translate the name, what the user sees, right? So let's do that. So let's change basic with the corresponding translation. Let's do the same for the medium level. And finally, let's do the same with the advanced level. There we go. Something important. Do you see that some elements in the JSON has this attribute override false, but this one, particularly the ones that I added as a custom attribute, has this override equals to true. This is important. If we don't specify this value to true, Azure will not implement these changes on the user interface. So this is quite important. But another important thing here is that I'm not limited to modifying what I see here by default set to true or my custom attributes. Indeed, I can modify anything. Let's do that. Let's look for a given name, which is false, and I'm going to set something totally different. Let's use Spanish. Yeah, this is for testing purposes. I want to show you how flexible this is. Okay, I'm going to set it to true, right? I'm going to save it, and now the only thing that I need to do is I need to come back to the language section. Let's go back to Italy. Let's look for the page that I'm trying to modify, and I just need to upload the same file. Okay, so there we go. Very important. There is a validation taking place here. So don't worry, if you break something, this won't work, which is amazing, because that's a way to ensure that at least everything will remain working. Okay, this is important in my opinion. Now, final step, let's run it one more time. Again, remember, I want to specify what language I am requesting. So I'm looking for Italy, and let's run it again. Amazing, so far so good. Let's go to the sign up form. This is amazing, and look at this. I mean, this is really one of the most powerful features that Azure Active Directory B2C offers, because I have already my custom translation, okay, which is amazing. And you see, I modified the first name to do it in Spanish, which is nombre, is amazing. So that it is super flexible, because if there is something specific that I don't like, for instance, password may sound too English and you don't like it. You want to put the corresponding translations, you can do it. So now we have implemented multi-language support. Actually, no coding required, which is amazing. And we have done everything, because if you pay attention, we have everything ready. We have our sign up form, we integrated with GitHub, and we do have our sign up, including translation. So we're done. This is amazing. Okay, there are more advanced features that you may be interested in. For instance, just let me show you. Let's go back to the local account. Let's assume for a moment that you want to provide a real customized layout. You want to provide your custom style sheet, custom CSS, because you have a specific design that you need to follow. You can do that, because as you can see, every single layout page can include custom content page. There is only one constraint that you need to keep in mind. This must be public, of course. It doesn't have to be a CS HTML. It can be just a plain HTML file. It must be a valid HTML format or markup. This is true. But this must be static, right? So the easiest way to do this is just using an Azure storage and just putting in one container, one public container, your HTML file, and that's all. And you can provide your custom CSS if you want. So we did a lot. So let's just have a quick recap of what we have done and see. So let's go back to the presentation. We went to the demo, and now we implemented our login. We implemented registration, including email verification and social network. There was, I didn't show you that, but there was a password recovery flow underlined there in somewhere in the screen. We implemented multi-language. We added some custom branding, okay? Database, hosting, certificates, security, encryption arrest, all those features were already out of the box. So we didn't have to do anything specific for that. And this is very important. All of this has been proven to work. So we are not talking about that, but you don't need to test all this stuff. Once you have finished and you feel comfortable how the flow looks like, this is ready for production, okay? So you grab that URL, you can build it. Remember that we are implementing OpenID Connect protocol. There are different flows depending on the kind of application that you are using, but it's always running under the protocol. That means that it's standard. We are not just doing something specific. But that's all. This is a production ready feature. And we are sure this will work as we expect. And most important, this is secure. This is a very secure authentication feature, which is what we want when we are talking about authentication. Finally, I want some takeaways you to remember, right? And this is very important. The next time you are trying to implement your login, just remember this session. We did a production ready, okay, no testing, and we are sure this will work. We did it without any coding. Well, I know you may say, okay, but you did some JSON modification. Well, that's true. That I don't consider that like coding, to be honest. But we didn't have to implement any backend, any external services, nothing. We did everything from the Azure portal. And this is very important, because that means that you don't need to be a developer to do that. So you don't need to be an expert in backend. You don't need to be an expert in frontend. If you are a product owner, you can. If you're just getting started, you can. If you don't have DevOps experience, it doesn't care, because you have it there, all from the Azure portal. And this is very, very important. We said that this feature, in my opinion, of course, will take from 4 to 6 weeks. And we did it in less than 45 minutes, okay? That means that now the first feature that I'm going to code for my business, if I am running a startup, an MVP, I don't have time, or I don't have the knowledge, is going to be something that's real value to my users, and not spending time on building something that in reality is it's a kind of must-have. Okay, so keep that in mind. Next time that you need to be your login screen, I just encourage you to try this service out, play around, and at the end of the day, if at a later stage you need something more complex or you want to have more control, you can always do that. But this is this is very important. Okay, and this is why I believe this is a silver bullet. As I said, this is a game changer when it comes to authentication. So that was all. So we did it. We did. I'm happy we did it. Thank you very much, guys. It was a pleasure for me to be here. And now, of course, I'm open to any questions that you guys may have. Thank you. So I don't see the questions. Okay. I hope you remember the session, guys, and give it a try. This is an amazing service. It's really powerful service. I'm gonna check out there is a WhatsApp. That's a great idea. There is a WhatsApp group where people can interact. Awesome. And of course, I will spend some time in the Twitch channel. So if you have more questions or you want to go something deeper into some topics that you may want to discuss, I'm open to do that. I really like discussing about that. As I said at the very beginning, I came to authentication by accident because I just started working on it. But then I just learned a lot about OpenID Connect and all the implications that we do have, and sometimes we miss them when we are building that. So I'm always open to have discussions in this topic. I really like it. So if there are no questions, I think we are ready. So again, thank you very much. I hope you have enjoyed the session and see you the next time. Bye.